Their temples were robbed, their homes ransacked, and their governor, he was doing most of the looting. The downtrodden residents of Sicily had nothing left but hope. That hope was one man, Marcus Tullius Cicero. This is the story of how a talented young lawyer took on the highest levels of the cutthroat political establishment in the dying days of the Republic of Rome to seek justice. And these are the Verrine Orations. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Random History, the Verrine Orations, Episode 1, Politics. The Verrine Orations are what historians call the series of speeches Cicero gave when he was prosecuting Gaius Verres, the corrupt Roman governor of the province Sicily. We take you back to 70 BC, Rome, when criminal trials were public shows, and this one was one you wouldn't want to miss. The trial of Verres was a sensation, and young Cicero, only 36 years old, rose to the challenge. Against Cicero, and defending Verres, was an ancient Roman legal dream team headed by Quintus Hortensius, Rome's leading politician and the top orator of his day. Sounds pretty dramatic. David versus Goliath in togas. But here's a fact we're going to have to face head on. Most of what we know about Verres comes from Cicero himself. Cicero published his trial speeches, both the ones he actually gave in court and the ones he wished he could give. We're lucky to have them. We're glad they survived the ravages of time, but we shouldn't forget that Cicero wrote the story. And what a story it is. To help appreciate it, in this episode, I'm going to give you a little background in the bizarre world of ancient Roman politics. In the next episode, we'll talk about the vicious civil wars that ended just a few years before the trial began, so we'll know a little more about what Cicero was up against. And then we'll get to how Cicero tried that case. So let's settle in and talk about Rome. Urbem Romam a principio reges habuera. That's Latin for, at first, kings held the city of Rome. These are the famous opening words of the Annals by Tacitus, one of the greatest historians of all time. I bring them up to help explain a key concept you'll have to know. Imperium. There it is, right in the middle. Imperium. Our word empire comes from that word, imperium, and it means power, absolute power. Kings ruled Rome for about 250 years, from 750 BC to about 500. Sure, there was also a senate, a group of wealthy old men originally from just 30 families. They called themselves patricians, Latin for fathers. Kings consulted with patricians, but the kings had all the power to declare war, command armies, and punish citizens with death. But as we all know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Who said that? Some English guy, probably corrupt. Moving on. Eventually, the kings became corrupt tyrants, and a group of patricians organized a coup and drove them out. Incidentally, one of the patrician coup plotters was named Marcus Junius Brutus. 500 years later, one of his descendants with the very same name would take on another allegedly corrupt, allegedly tyrannical, and definitely dictatorial contemporary of Cicero, Julius Caesar.
But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man.
That's Shakespeare. Different subject. Maybe next episode. Moving on, back to Rome. In about 500 BC, the patricians drove out the kings, but they kept that imperium. They took that absolute power and gave it to a magistrate, they elected every year, the consul. The consul is a number one in Roman politics. He's sort of like an elected king, one you elect every year. That's why we gave him that crown. There's still a Senate to give him advice, but to be a consul, you had to be a senator first. And the consul presided over the Senate, so he had a lot of influence. But here's the thing, there are two consuls in Rome. The Romans always elect two consuls, and those two consuls share all the power. So if you were a bad guy and you got lucky and you won the top spot in Roman politics, you couldn't do everything you want because there's always another consul there who has the same amount of power you have, and he's watching over you. And at the end of one year, both of you are out of office and out of power. This feature of Roman politics is important for understanding what happens to Verres. A magistrate who has imperium could commit crimes while he's in office. But Roman law says you cannot indict him, bring a prosecution, while he still has that great and glorious imperium. But once this criminal magistrate leaves office and surrenders his imperium, he's fair game. Prosecute away. Okay, now we are ready for our next magistrates, praetors. Romans invented praetors when things got bigger at Rome and messier, and they needed more than two consuls to run the city. Think of praetors as sort of junior consuls at a really tough summer camp. They had imperium, but they were beneath the consuls on the totem pole of power, sort of like vice president in our system, except they get to do cool things like command armies, smack plebeians, that kind of stuff. One praetor becomes the urban praetor. He runs Rome from day to day, and he might also preside over a jury trial like a judge. And now we're going to talk about our last magistrate, quaestors. These circles with the letter Q. A quaestor was sort of a public secretary, financial officer, helper, fixer, whatever, for a consul or for a praetor. Quaestors did not have imperium, but they're still a pretty big deal. That's why I gave them smiley faces in this drawing. Spoiler alert, after inventing these magistrates, Rome gets bigger, stronger, and soon becomes the most powerful empire of the ancient world, and establishes a civilization that is a model for all future Western governments that continues to influence us to this day. Rome is the power that bestrides the known world like a colossus. And as Rome expanded, it conquered provinces, places outside Italy that Rome would rule and tax. The first and most important province was Sicily. Sicily is an island in the shape of a triangle right next to Italy. And in the ancient world, Sicily was fabulously wealthy and an amazing, productive, and stable source of food. Did I say taxes? Being the ex-consul or ex-praetor who got to govern Sicily, that was a great job. Because when a former consul or praetor left for his province, he took along his imperium. This was a big deal, because most provincials weren't citizens of Rome during the Republican times, so they lacked the protection that Roman law provided, like sacrosanct tribunes. A governor could really run amok with that kind of power. Right, Mr. Verres? Okay, this gives us one more job to talk about, tribune. A tribune is elected every year, and his job is to protect the Roman people by saying stop. Literally. He says stop. Weird, right? But powerful. A tribune can stop the assembly from passing laws. He can stop a consul from punishing a citizen. He can stop pretty much anything that happens in Rome. And a tribune has a power called sacrosanctitas, which means something like holy. Don't touch a tribune. Tribunes who say stop tell us something pretty important about the Roman Republic. Power is divided at every level, and every magistrate checks every other magistrate. At least, that's how it's supposed to work, until it broke. I'm talking about the Roman Revolution, a spectacular 100-year period
of non-stop murder, mayhem, and massacres, when this carefully balanced Roman constitution broke. It was one bloody mess after another. But after a first period of civil wars, Rome took a breather and tried to get back to normal, a dangerous, new, corrupt, and unstable normal. That's the world Cicero grew up in, the world in which he made his mark with the Verrine Orations. Next time, we'll take a look at how the first phase of the Roman Revolution nearly tore the country apart. You'll hear about the social war and the dread warlords Marius and Sulla. And you'll see how Cicero rose from obscurity to fame, not by joining the warlords, but by rhetoric and law, the arts of peace, deploying his talent, education, and unbelievable work ethic. 3 things we should always keep in mind. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon for episode 2 of Random History, the Verrine Orations.